Are you and Karlissa friends? She say you messy. I don't have no friend. I ain't nobody friend. Ain't nobody my motherfucking friend. I know her. And I don't give a fuck what nobody say about me. You think I give a fuck? Messy with motion and getting some money. How about that?
It started with one sentence. One petty, razor-sharp sentence that didn't just shade, it scorched. Tia Kemp casually claiming Karlissa has no friends might sound small on paper, but on the internet, that's not an insult. That's a declaration of war. And Karlissa didn't just hear it, she felt it because in today's online Hunger Games, saying someone has no friends isn't about social circles. It's about credibility. It's about influence. It's about telling the internet nobody stands with you. And when that line dropped, timelines froze, comment sections combusted, and spectators grabbed popcorn like this was WrestleMania with Wi-Fi. Karlissa didn't whisper back. She didn't dodge. She didn't soft launch a response. She fired back emotionally, publicly, and with the kind of energy that says, "You tried me on the wrong day." And suddenly this wasn't about friendship anymore. It was about loyalty, perception, and who really has power when the cameras turn on. Reality TV drama, please. This made the Kardashians look like they're arguing over who forgot to water the plants. Because when women who already live in the spotlight start questioning each other's support systems, it's never just personal. It's strategic. And once the internet smells blood, it doesn't stop watching. It didn't start as a rant. It didn't come with screaming, receipts, or a dramatic countdown. It started the way the most effective internet chaos always does, casually. One sentence. One dismissive claim tossed out like it was nothing. Tia Kemp saying Karlissa has no friends sounded petty on the surface, but everyone online knew instantly what that really meant. That wasn't shade. That was a character assassination wrapped in a smirk. Because in the social media coliseum, saying someone has no friends isn't about loneliness. It's about credibility. It's about saying nobody rides for you. Nobody trusts you. Nobody stays. And when that line hit the timeline, it landed like a brick through a glass window. Quiet at first, then suddenly everything shattered. Karlissa didn't respond immediately, and that pause alone made the moment heavier. Silence online isn't neutral, it's suspense. People replayed the clip, screenshotted the comment, zoomed in like there was hidden meaning between the words. Comment sections exploded with speculation before Karlissa even opened her mouth. Some people laughed it off as messy banter. Others said it crossed a line that doesn't uncross easily. Because friendship is leverage in public life, Karlissa has never branded herself as soft or polished. She's loud, emotional, unfiltered. Someone who says what she feels in real time, even when it costs her. That kind of personality attracts strong reactions, loyalty from some, distance from others. And Tia Kemp knew exactly what she was doing when she targeted that. Karlissa's response wasn't delayed because she was crafting a PR statement. It was delayed because the hit landed where it hurt. When she finally fired back, it wasn't calculated. It was raw, defensive, emotional in a way that said, "You didn't just talk about me, you tried to define me." She didn't deny feeling attacked. She leaned into it. She talked about loyalty, about knowing who's real, about people who smile in public and disappear in private. Her tone made one thing clear. This wasn't just internet noise to her. This was personal. And once Karlissa responded, the story stopped being about a comment and turned into a referendum on her entire social existence. People immediately started digging. Old videos resurfaced. Past fallouts got dragged back into daylight. Viewers began playing amateur detective, counting who showed up for her, who stopped appearing, who unfollowed, who stayed silent. The internet loves audits, and suddenly Karlissa's friendships were being audited like tax records. That's when the reaction split. Supporters said Tia Kemp was intentionally cruel, using a low blow because she knew it would sting. They praised Karlissa for standing up for herself and refusing to let the narrative stick. To them, the clapback wasn't insecurity. It was self-defense. Critics saw something else. They claimed Karlissa's emotional response proved the comment struck too close to home. They argued that if it wasn't true, it wouldn't have hit that hard. And the more Karlissa spoke, the more they dissected her tone, her wording, her pauses. As if emotional expression itself was evidence, neutral viewers pretended neutrality while refreshing the page every few minutes. The sarcasm online was vicious. Memes joked about friendship scoreboards and loyalty leaderboards. Tweets compared the situation to high school cafeteria politics without consequences. Some people laughed. Some people cringed. Some people quietly wondered how brutal it must feel to have your support system questioned in front of millions. Because that's the part people don't like to admit. When someone publicly claims you have no friends, they're not just insulting you, they're inviting everyone else to prove them right. Karlissa's clapback made it clear she wasn't going to let that happen quietly. She emphasized that not everyone who smiles in your face is your friend. And not every real friend needs to be visible online. She reframed the accusation, turning it into a statement about discernment instead of isolation. But the internet doesn't love nuance. It loves sides. And once sides formed, every interaction became evidence. If someone commented in support, it was celebrated. If someone stayed silent, it was suspicious. Silence became louder than words. Support became strategy. And suddenly, the entire timeline felt like it was watching to see who would stand next to Karlissa publicly. That's when things started to escalate. Because Tia Kemp didn't just say Karlissa had no friends, she planted doubt. And doubt spreads faster than facts ever could. Even people defending Karlissa found themselves explaining instead of dismissing, which is how narratives quietly shift. The comment also reopened old wounds, past disagreements, burned bridges. Moments Karlissa thought were done and buried suddenly resurfaced with new captions and fresh commentary. The internet has no respect for timelines. Everything is always current if it fits the narrative. Karlissa's emotional honesty worked in her favor with some viewers. They saw vulnerability. They saw pain. They saw someone reacting like a human being, not a brand. Others saw instability. They saw someone rattled by a single sentence. The same reaction created two completely opposite interpretations, and that's where things became dangerous. Because when perception splits like that, truth becomes irrelevant. The loudest version wins. This stopped being about friendship and started being about power. About who gets to define who. About whether someone's value can be measured by visible alliances. And once that conversation starts, it doesn't end quickly or cleanly. Karlissa wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was defending her identity against a narrative she didn't create but was being forced to answer for. And the internet wasn't done watching, because once a comment exposes a nerve, people keep pressing it. They wait for the next response, the next slip, the next moment that can be twisted into confirmation. This wasn't shade anymore. This wasn't petty drama. This was the opening act of something much louder, and what followed turned one sentence into a full-blown spectacle that dragged everyone watching into the mess whether they wanted to be there or not. By the time Karlissa's clapback hit the timeline, the internet had already decided this wasn't just a moment, it was a full-blown saga. What started as a petty jab had transformed into a loyalty Olympics, complete with spectators, scorecards, and people loudly claiming they were neutral while clearly keeping track of who stood where. The insult had legs now, and it was running laps through social media with no intention of slowing down. Memes arrived first, because memes always beat logic to the scene. Screenshots of Karlissa's responses were slapped with captions about friendship audits and loyalty checks, turning a personal issue into a running joke. People laughed, reposted, and tagged friends without realizing they were helping lock a narrative into place. Humor didn't soften the situation, it preserved it, freezing the insult in digital amber for everyone to keep revisiting. Influencers jumped in almost immediately, drawn by engagement like moths to a ring light. The neutral disclaimer came out fast. usually followed by long explanations that absolutely chose a side. Therapy-style language flooded the discourse, with words like boundaries, abandonment, emotional triggers, and patterns being tossed around by people who learned them from TikTok captions. Once gossip starts borrowing psychological vocabulary, it stops sounding like opinion and starts sounding like judgment. And judgment sticks far longer than facts. That's when the conversation shifted from Karlissa and Tia Kemp as individuals to a broader debate about what friendship even means in public life. Does support have to be visible to be real? Or does silence automatically equal betrayal? Who gets to define loyalty? The person living the relationship or the audience watching from their phones? These questions didn't bring clarity, but they gave people permission to argue with confidence. Comment sections turned into digital courtrooms with no judges and unlimited prosecutors. Everyone had a theory, and everyone believed their theory was backed by context. Old clips were stitched together, timelines rearranged, and past interactions reframed like evidence in a true crime documentary. The confidence was overwhelming, even when the proof was non-existent. Celebrity-adjacent reactions made everything messier. Not direct statements, but subtle signals, likes, comments that appeared and disappeared. The internet reads those movements like classified intelligence. When certain people didn't publicly defend Karlissa, silence was treated as confirmation. When others showed support, it was labeled a calculated alliance. No action was neutral anymore. Tia Kemp's lack of immediate clarification only added fuel to the fire. To some viewers, her silence felt intentional and strategic. To others, it felt like confidence. Either way, it kept the tension alive and allowed speculation to keep growing unchecked. The absence of explanation became part of the story. Karlissa continued speaking, but not in a polished or coordinated way. Her responses came in emotional bursts, very on-brand and unapologetically raw. She doubled down on her message about discernment and the difference between proximity and loyalty. Supporters saw strength and honesty in her words, while critics heard defensiveness. The same sentences kept producing opposite reactions, deepening the divide. Pop culture comparisons exploded across the timeline. People joked that this drama made reality TV reunions look scripted. Others said it felt like a high school group chat with health consequences. Some claimed it was reality television without editors, which is when things always get uncomfortable. The comparisons weren't just jokes, they framed the conflict as entertainment, making it easier for people to stay invested. At some point, the focus shifted again. The conversation stopped being about whether Karlissa had friends and started being about why the accusation worked so easily. Why did so many people find it believable? Why did it spread so fast? That question cut deeper than the insult itself because it pointed toward perception rather than truth. The uncomfortable answer was that Karlissa's public persona made the claim easier to accept. Loud, emotional, confrontational energy often gets mislabeled as isolation. Not because it's accurate, but because it fits a stereotype the internet already believes. And once a narrative aligns with an existing stereotype, it spreads without resistance. Defenders pushed back hard, calling out that bias and reminding people that being outspoken doesn't mean being alone. They argued that being selective about relationships isn't the same as being abandoned. But even those defenses required explanation, and explaining is how narratives gain more oxygen instead of disappearing. As the debate raged on, the audience waited. They waited to see who would speak next, who would publicly align, and who would stay silent. Silence became suspense, and support became spectacle. Every interaction felt loaded with meaning, whether it was meant to be or not. By then, it was obvious this wasn't cooling down. It was escalating. The insult had evolved into a symbol, shorthand for bigger questions about loyalty, likability, and public worth. And once a story reaches that stage, it stops being about resolution and starts being about fallout. The tension wasn't going anywhere. It was just waiting for the consequences to catch up. When the noise finally dipped from a scream to a steady background buzz, that's when the real damage started showing up. Not the kind that trends for 24 hours and disappears behind a fake apology and a distraction headline, but the slow and comfortable kind that changes how people look at you even when they stop talking about you. Karlissa didn't wake up canceled. She woke up questioned. And in internet culture, that's far more dangerous, not because cancellation is loud and temporary. Doubt is quiet and long-lasting. The aftermath didn't arrive with dramatic announcements or public fallout. It crept in through hesitation, conversations that suddenly felt careful, invitations that quietly stopped coming, messages that got left unread longer than usual. Nobody said her name directly, but the pause was loud enough to hear. When a public figure becomes controversial in this specific way, people don't rush to abandon them, they wait to see who else moves first. Public perception fractured in a way that couldn't be stitched back together cleanly. Some people continued to see Karlissa as outspoken, emotional, and real in a way that felt refreshing. Others started seeing her through a colder lens, shaped by the accusation that had been planted. Not chaotic, but difficult. Not passionate, but exhausting. That single shift in framing rewrote the way everything else was interpreted. Every move Karlissa made after that felt heavier. A laugh looked forced. A rant looked unstable. A calm moment looked rehearsed. Even silence became suspicious. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was being analyzed. And once the audience starts analyzing instead of empathizing, sincerity becomes a performance whether you want it to or not. When Karlissa continued speaking, trying to clarify her stance and defend her character, the response wasn't what it used to be. Supporters still showed up, but the tone had changed. Less certainty, more justification. Defending someone becomes harder when the conversation shifts from facts to trust, because trust is subjective and impossible to prove on a timeline. Critics, on the other hand, grew bolder. The more Karlissa spoke, the more her words were dissected. Tone was scrutinized. Timing was questioned. Even her emotions were debated. Was she hurt, or was she playing hurt? Was she defending herself, or was she unraveling? The same clip produced 5 different interpretations depending on who was watching. Behind the scenes, relationships felt the pressure to. Some people stayed publicly supportive, doubling down on loyalty and refusing to budge. Others chose distance, not out of hostility, but caution. In situations like this, silence isn't always betrayal. Sometimes it's self-preservation. But to the internet, absence always means something. The industry response followed a similar pattern. There were no official statements, no dramatic rejections, no visible blacklists, just hesitation. Brands don't fear controversy, they fear unpredictability. And narratives that suggest isolation or instability, whether fair or not, trigger caution. Chaos can be marketed. Doubt cannot dot at the same time. Something uncomfortable happened alongside the fallout. The attention didn't disappear. It transformed. People didn't want Karlissa gone. They wanted clarity. They wanted to see what she would do next. Would she retreat and let the noise die down? Would she double down and confront the narrative head-on? Would she rebrand, soften her image, or lean fully into the role the internet was assigning her? Because the truth is, the internet doesn't demand perfection. It demands continuation. Uncertainty keeps people watching longer than closure ever could. Karlissa's past became a living document, constantly edited by public opinion. Old moments resurfaced with new captions. Interactions that once felt normal were now framed as signs. Context shifted depending on the story being told. Once history becomes flexible, legacy becomes unstable, and that instability invited endless reinterpretation. The original comment, "No friends," stopped being about friendship altogether. It became shorthand for something bigger: trust, likability, social capital. Whether someone is chosen when there's nothing to gain. And those questions cut deeper than any insult ever could. Karlissa found herself defending something that shouldn't need defending. Not specific relationships, but her worth as someone people want to stand next to. That's the quiet cruelty of public perception. It turns personal traits into public debates. Meanwhile, Tia Kemp's role in the situation became fixed in people's minds. To some, she was the instigator who knew exactly where to strike. To others, she was simply saying what people already thought. The truth almost stopped mattering. Narratives don't survive on accuracy. They survive on repetition. And repetition had already done its work. As days passed, the conversation faded from trending topics, but it didn't disappear. It settled into the background, ready to resurface the next time Karlissa spoke too loudly, reacted too emotionally, or found herself in another public disagreement. Scandals like this don't end. They hibernate. The most unsettling realization came slowly. Then all at once, this was never really about friendship. It was about control of the narrative and the moment someone else defines you publicly, especially with a line that sticks. You spend far longer trying to outrun it than you ever spent building your own image. Karlissa wasn't just responding to an insult. She was fighting a version of herself that the internet found convenient. Eventually, the timeline moved on. It always does. Another argument, another exposed DM, another viral meltdown waiting for attention. But the residue remained. A slight hesitation in how people reacted. A pause before defending. A question mark that hadn't been there before. That's how reputations change in the digital age. Not with explosions, but with erosion. Because loud drama fades, but quiet doubt stays. And once the internet starts asking whether someone is truly supported, truly trusted, truly wanted, it doesn't forget the answer it decided on. And this is where the conversation really matters. Because if you think this drama ends with one comment and one clap back, you clearly haven't watched the internet long enough. These stories don't disappear, they evolve. One sentence turns into a storyline, one reaction becomes a personality trait, and suddenly everyone's an expert on loyalty, friendship, and who deserves to be supported. So now it's your turn. Jump into the comments and say it loud. Jump into the comments and say it loud.